all the games I used to play in my younger, wilder days. The game of clubs and tees had never crossed my mind. But after some discussion with my closest, dearest friends, I decided that...
Welcome into another episode of the Turn Fantasy Golf Podcast. As always, I'm Andrew Putters. I got my man Joe Nicely and special guest, new person that just signed on with Rotoballer.com, Andy Lack from the West Coast out there. Well, first of all, welcome to Rotoballer.com, Andy. Welcome to the Turn Fantasy Golf Podcast. We're so happy to have you on. And like you said, man, you're a podcast machine. So first, man, Andy, tell us a little bit about where you came from, why golf, or what got you interested in golf, what got you started, what really drew you to Rotoballer, man.
I appreciate that, man. And first of all, thanks for having me, guys. It's great to join you guys. I'm a big fan of your podcast. I listen every week. So happy to be a guest for you guys on any time. And to answer your question, I got well, I've been playing golf my whole life. I've been kind of around the game forever and always been a huge fan of the game. I grew up playing junior tournaments and have always I got into the PGA Tour too as I got older, just going to a lot of tournaments with my dad. And then I got an internship with Golf Digest as soon as I graduated college. And they actually empowered me to do some real writing for them. Like I wrote some real articles for them, and I did a lot of work in their gambling space. It was kind of right at the time that they were trying to embrace gambling and do a lot more gambling content. And then basically when the internship ended, I was like, I don't really want to stop doing this. I love doing this. I love writing and talking about golf. So I started my website and I started my podcast, and that was about a little over 6 months ago. And it picked up a little steam, luckily, thanks to guys like Joe, who, I think Joe was my 4th or 5th episode. And he said yes to me. And that's kind of where guys like Joe and Spencer and Rotoballer came on my radar. So kind of built up a friendship with Joe and Spencer, and kind of asked them about some more opportunities at Rotoballer, because I have a ton of respect for all you guys in the work that you guys do over there. And here we are, man.
Yeah. And I'm sure Joe can speak more for Rotoballer than I can, but man, we're love to have you. We're so happy to have you on the crew. And so what kind of content are you spitting out for them every article wise?
So the first real article that I'm doing for Rotoballer, every single Monday I do like a pretty in-depth, but nothing crazy, kind of just tournament preview at a glance. I think what's great about that article is I write it on like Saturday. And so it comes out pretty early, like first thing Monday morning. And I think it's a great way to get started on your research. I basically just break down the course. I do a little bit of a tournament overview. And then I talk about all of the key stats that I'm looking for, and then talk about like 3 players that I'm looking to target. Usually the article even comes out before the pricing is. So I'm kind of just guessing on where these guys will be priced at, but I tend to do everything like a week ahead of time. So I think it's a great article to kind of get started on your research, because that usually drops like first thing on Monday morning, and it gives you, I give like a full picture of the course. I talk about all the stats that I'm putting in my model, and then give some early leans of the types of players that I'm looking to target. So I've had a ton of fun writing that article, and then I've been started last week to do the expert roundtable with you guys, and I'm sure there's more stuff ahead in the near future.
Yeah. Before we get Joe talking real quick, I just don't, as far as using Rotoballer, this is to the casual golf fan, to the DFS golf fan. I just don't know why everybody does Rotoballer. We got you with the early field breakdown. Then Josh is throwing everything he knows about with the Google map, the view of the course, breaking it down. Joe giving his core 4, his horse for the course, Spencer with more gambling stuff, and his really just amazing amounts of content he puts out on the math side as far as what kind of players to target. And then you also with some more gambling stuff on the back end. And man, I just tell you what, Rotoballer is the best one place to go in the world for your daily fantasy needs. So real quick, Joe Nicely, the man, the myth, the legend. My friend, tell us a little about what we got going on price-wise for the rest of the season for Rotoballer.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Andrew. Good to see you. Good to be back. Thanks to Spencer for sitting in for me last week, and really happy to have Andy with us, and happy to have Andy on the Rotoballer team. And that's what we look at it as a team, and we're always looking to add talent. We feel like Andy's a great addition and going to be a real asset for us going forward. But as far as our content, you can go over there and check it out. We got all kinds of tools, man, as you mentioned. Got a great PGA DFS research station, which you can kind of find everything in one place. We have a lineup optimizer. If you want to build multiple lineups, you can certainly take advantage of that. And you mentioned a lot of the other great stuff over there. But we're running a deal for $69.99 for the rest of the year. That will take you through the Tour Championship. You can use promo code NICE, NICE, and get a discount off that.
There you go, guys. So last week, well, first of all, we played any golf this week, guys? Anybody played any golf?
Yeah, I played. What I always do is so I'm like kind of in a black hole with the tournament from like Friday through Tuesday and a week ahead of time. So like starting on Friday of this week, I'll do all my British Open stuff, and then I'll finish up all my podcasts and stuff by Tuesday. And then I'll on Wednesday and Thursday, I'll try and play sometimes 36 holes a day. And then by Friday of that week, I'll get started looking towards the next tournament. So I played on Wednesday and Thursday.
Yeah, I'm strictly weekend at this point right now, Andrew. I think you know that. Played 18 yesterday morning, 4th of July morning. Did the family thing, hung out by the pool, just squeezed in 18 holes for fun yesterday morning. But it was good. Good to be back out there. Actually, I hadn't got to play in a couple of weeks. Had some back stuff going on and work stuff going on and writing stuff going on. So it's been a challenge for me to get on the golf course this year, it feels like. But I always enjoy getting out there, man.
Did not get to defend our title at the July 4th scramble at the Brook this year, Joe. I found out, or I didn't find out. I just worked it out with my schedule. That I found out last night late I was going to get to play today. So I did dust off the clubs and fired a little 66 on them today at the little Muni in the little game that they have over there on Mondays. But other than that, I got a big tournament coming up. Knox County 2-man. This weekend. We won it last year, won our flight last year, so we'll see what happens. I don't know. Don't get to play much. When I do, I try to pack in as much, like Andy said, as much golf as you can in a short period of time. So last week, guys, what'd y'all think about the tournament, man? Ended up being a pretty good top of the leaderboard there all weekend, really. So give your thoughts on that, Joe.
Yeah, man, the Rocket. I kind of discussed in some articles, it's kind of feels like a throwaway event a little bit, not really gained much traction there. And I think this was the third year it was played up in Detroit. But that being said, it's always fun to have a golf tournament to watch, especially kind of over the holiday weekend. Ended up being a really exciting finish, actually. Had a jam-packed leaderboard there. Cameron Davis emerged from that 3-man playoff with Joaquin Neiman and Troy Merritt. And Cameron Davis is a guy we've kind of in the PGA DFS community known for a while, liked the roster, and a guy we feel is really talented. And so, it's not a huge surprise that he was going to break through and get his first PGA Tour win. Kind of heartbreaking for Joaquin Neiman, man. Doesn't make a bogey all week over 72 holes and makes a bogey on the first playoff hole. So that tough finish to that for Neiman. He'll get another victory on the PGA Tour very soon. And Troy Merritt was a guy that I was actually really high on as a value play. So I was excited to see him play well. Just a kind of really weird week overall. Hideki withdrew. Bryson and his caddy parted ways, which I'm sure we might talk about a little bit. And he proceeded to go out and miss the cut as the mega chalk. And overwhelming favorite. So kind of a weird week, but a fun weekend and enjoyed seeing it and happy to get into this week, man.
Yeah. So Andy, you said you black out. You're basically all weekend working. So you don't watch, do you watch any tournament golf?
I do. I'm able to watch the golf. I'm just kind of like multitasking, doing the stuff for the next tournament. But I've always got it on. And like when it's coming down the stretch, especially if I've got my guys in it, which I did have a couple last week. Of course, unfortunately, they didn't come through. But I'll watch when it's kind of really getting into it and kind of always have it on the background while I'm doing all of my research on my computer. So I got a chance to see all of it. I'm with Joe. It was a good tournament for the most part to have on in terms of like the excitement. There were a lot of guys coming down the stretch with a chance to win. I got a little bit frustrated with the course in the sense that there were so many guys that were not hitting great shots down the stretch, and there was absolutely no penalty for bad shots. And I don't even think that that's like a fault of the course. Like Donald Ross is an incredible designer. He's one of my favorite designers. It's just the way that it was set up was so easy. But all those guys, like Neiman was hitting some bad shots down the stretch, and it was never like, oh, is this guy going to make a bogey or get himself out of the tournament? It was like, oh, he's just not going to make a birdie here. He's going to tap in for par. And I tend to like tournaments where there's a lot more, there's obviously a reward for good shots, but there's more of a penalty for bad shots. And I didn't think there was too much of a penalty for bad shots whatsoever, which is just like you get into this situation down the stretch and it's like, okay, is my guy going to make birdie or is he going to make par? You really have to hit like I think one of the only bogeys that I saw down the stretch was by Jason Kokrak, and he literally hit a chip 2 feet up in the air. Like those were the types of shots that you had to hit to make bogey on this course. So I wish that it was a little bit more penal in that sense. I think it's more fun where when guys are kind of ejecting and going in different directions. But at the same time, like, how can you complain? You had such a packed leaderboard. Cameron Davis got it done. He was, like Joe said, a player that I have been on for quite some time. Unfortunately, I hopped off this week, but glad to see him get the win. And I think it's probably the first of many, if I had to take a guess.
Yeah, I mean, Donald Ross overall, you're looking at getting into the 100-year age on most of his courses, and they're just having trouble going with the test of time at that level of talent unless they trick them up. And they got some rain up there in Detroit, and the golf course is pretty soft, and it's a shame because it's a great golf club, and there's several great Donald Ross designs that if the weather isn't great, or if they get soft conditions, they can really light it up. So it's kind of sad because, like you said, Donald Ross, great designer. That's why that's one of the reasons I like about the week before at the Travelers. You can see somebody shoot 64 and 74, and you saw good shots versus bad shots. Here, you're 66 and 70 is, basically the same, just a few less putts went in. I was, kind of amazed. We had Chris Kirk up there, Neiman, Kokrak, Stallings did a little flash there, third round. I was thinking, golly, how am I not finding something? We should be high-fiving everywhere, and it's just, I guess the wrong place, wrong time, or right place, right time for the people that had them. So, but congratulations to Davis. But let's move on now to this week. And if you were upset at the field last week, you're going to be disgusted this week. John Deere Classic, folks, 50th year anniversary, designed by D.A. Weibring in 2000, the TPC Deere Run up in Silvis, Illinois. This has been for years and years and years, the Jordan Spieth, Zach Johnson showdown. Not sure we're going to get that this year since Spieth is not elected to play, but par 71, 72-68. Greens are pretty standard, actually maybe a little on the slow side for PGA Tour conditions. But here's the thing is, folks, we don't see a lot of bluegrass, Kentucky bluegrass, or any type of full bent grass throughout much anywhere on the PGA Tour. So this may be why we see a little lower scores than normal. This tournament's had many names, but you're going to see a lot of birdies. That's all we can say about it this week. You're going to see a lot of birdies. Bunch of former champions are in the field. Probably too many to mention, but go ahead, Andy. First off, do you got anything you want to say about the tournament in general? We didn't play it in 2020 because of COVID restrictions in that state. Anything you really that stands out to you about this tournament in general?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that I would say, and I talked about this a little bit in my Rotoballer article, is like if you had a process that you felt like worked last week at the Rocket Mortgage, I wouldn't change things up too much. My process did work for the most part. The thing that outside of Webb Simpson, but the thing that I'm probably going to be changing up the most is I'm going to add some bent grass putting into the mix. I'm going to add a little bit more of a weight on approach as opposed to putting. I just felt like last week, what the stats were showing was that there you are not going to find a tournament on tour where putting is higher correlated with high finishers like you did last week at the Rocket Mortgage. And you actually saw that end up bearing out with how the putters finished that week again as well. I think there's a little bit more on approach this week. Like I'm looking a little bit more so at approach this week than I did last week, because I just think that you look at some of the guys that have had some success here, all really, really good wedge players. Jordan Spieth, Zach Johnson, Steve Stricker, all of those guys can get super hot with their wedges and make enough putts to contend. So really the things that I'm looking at this week is like wedge play, putting still as well. You always got to look at guys who can get hot with the putter on courses where it takes 20 under to win, and just generally guys that really thrive in easy scoring conditions. Like I really think, guys, that this is a different type of vibe than a lot of tournaments that these guys are used to seeing. There's a different skill set involved for a tournament like this than, I don't know, an Arnold Palmer Invitational even, or a Honda Classic. Like, there's some players that their game is just better suited for grinding out pars, and there's some players where their game is just better suited for getting to 25 under. Some guys just like those types of tournaments more. So I'm really looking at guys that have played well on easy courses and kind of thrived in easy scoring conditions and can kind of really get hot with their wedges and their putter.
So, Joe, moving on to the slate, man, we got these top four guys: Berger, Sungjae Im, Brian Harman, Cam Davis won last week. This is the kind of field that Daniel Berger likes to play against, it seems, and he does fairly well against fields like this, probably because he's a little bit more talented than the rest. So start at the top four, throw in some stuff about the golf course. I know Berger's one of your boys. He's one of your main if you probably have a tattoo of him somewhere on your body. So let's hear about these top four. Who you like?
Yeah, man. Kind of an interesting top four here. As Andy mentioned, it's basically just a pin your ears back, go make birdies type of tournament this week, and as a result, it kind of brings the whole field into play. So while I feel like there's some great players up here, as far as this tournament goes, obviously a very weak field. So you don't really have those guys up at the top. We got Daniel Berger, we got Sungjae Im, we got Brian Harman. I think all three of those guys are very strong plays. But you don't have that Bryson DeChambeau, that Dustin Johnson, that John Rahm, that guy that you just feel is a prohibitive favorite. But if we did have to pick one this week, it would be Daniel Berger. Has a T5 on his John Deere resume here. An excellent player. First in this field in proximity from 150 to 175. As Andy mentioned, it's a wedge fest this week. So I'm looking at proximity from 125 to 150, 150 to 175. Berger is strong in both those areas. First in overall strokes gained approach over the last 24 rounds, and he's fifth in birdies or better gained. So I think you can certainly look at Berger this week. Sungjae is a player that, basically plays every week. So he's very adaptable to any type of course conditions. But he just feels a little bit hit and miss to me. Looked good last week. Don't have a problem with rostering Sungjae, but I'm not making him a top priority this week. I will be making Brian Harman a priority. The guy's playing maybe the best golf of his career. He's had an excellent season here. He's a former winner in this tournament and has played very well on this golf course. He can make birdies, but he's also good at avoiding bogeys. Second in the field in bogey avoidance. So I'll be giving Brian Harman some serious love this week. Cam Davis, man, you kind of have to feel like, he's coming in off the win. Might be a little bit of a letdown there, but he can rack up birdies in bunches. So, you might want to give Cameron Davis a look. But if I'm up at the top this week, which I don't know that I will be, probably between Berger and Harman for me.
Yeah, so Andy, no Jordan Spieth this week in this tournament, so it's no automatic click. Who are you looking at to start out with?
It's tough, guys. I kind of want to see how the ownership shakes out a little bit too. It's still really early in the week, but I'm probably leaning towards Sungjae, believe it or not. And I like Berger. I like the options that Sungjae gives me a little bit more in terms of the price point. I think at the end of the day, I'm probably going to end up doing a little bit of both. I just think with Sungjae, like, he's so good on these easy courses. Like he makes so many birdies, and the irons are coming back for him too. Like he's gained strokes on approach in 3 consecutive starts, and I don't think that a ton of people are going to gravitate to him maybe the way that they would gravitate to some of these other guys. So I think if you can get like an ownership break on Sungjae, he would probably be my lean. But with that being said, the guy at 9,900, Henley, is the guy that I wrote up in the Rotoballer article, and the guy that is probably the one that's going to be most prominently featured in my lineup. So I'm probably going to start a lot. I know I'm kind of cheating a little bit and bringing it down to the 9,000 range as well, but he's probably the guy that I'm going to start a lot with.
Russell Henley. That's who Joe's got tattooed on his other bicep is Russell Henley. He talks about him a lot. Great iron player, Georgia Bulldog. For me, guys, here at the top, I just stick with what I already said. Daniel Berger plays well against weak fields. It's because he's more talented. It's like lining up a DJ in a WGC for me. I'm all over Daniel Berger at this 11-1. I'm gonna pay up. Hardly ever do I bring out the highest price player, but I think this week you can, because there's going to be so much inconsistency from say 95 down. 95 to 8,000 is very, very weak compared to normally. So I'm starting with Daniel Berger. Moving on down 9,000. You already threw out Henley, Andy. But who else you going to key on? They say this. We'll just go ahead and throw the 8-9 range in together. And we got the big Zach Johnson sitting there at 8,500, who has probably the best history on this golf course overall, if you count out the number of years he's played here over in him or Jordan. And like I said, Jordan's not playing this week. So Zach Johnson, we looking at him, or are we going to bypass him and say that he's washed up?
I'm gonna play Zach Johnson. He was he was the other guy that I wrote up in my article this morning, and I talked about in my podcast on Sunday too. So I don't feel the need to rehash the whole thing, but I know that he's probably a little bit overpriced and potentially overowned based on what he has done this year. And I usually run from those guys completely in the other direction, but I really think that you should play Zach Johnson this week, providing that he's not like 25%, which I don't think that he will be. But, it doesn't even have as much to do with the course history here as you would think. I think that's why most people will probably gravitate to Zach Johnson. I just really like what I'm seeing with the ball striking. Like, he gained 4.5 strokes on approach last week at the Travelers. That's his best iron week since October. He gained off the tee for the first time in 5 starts. The ball striking is just really starting to come around with him. He's the number 1 bent grass putter in this entire field. He's won 5 times on bent grass. He's coming off a bad putting week. Now the ball striking's trending, and he's returning to a course where he knows the green's probably better than anyone else. I tend to get so different at the bottom, where I tend to find guys that no one else is really playing at all. So Zach Johnson, regardless of ownership and the price, like, he's a guy that I'm completely happy to eat whatever chalk he comes in at. I just think he's a solid play this week.
So Joe, what's your talk on him? I feel like I already know one of the guys in this 99 all the way down to $8,000 that you're going to be looking at. I'm gonna throw it out. Maverick McNeely. We've been high on him for probably 3 months now. That's a guy that I love. I love both those guys in this range. Joe, give us a couple of guys out there at 99 to 8.
Yeah, I think this is actually, when we're taking this salary scale into account, guys, I think this is actually a pretty solid range, and probably where I'll be focusing fairly heavily. When we talk about recent form, we talk about Russell Henley, who's kind of finding his groove again after a little down period there, but the irons are firing. We're looking for guys, we talked about kind of wedge range. And Henley ranks first in this field in proximity overall, and he's 5th from 125 to 150 and 9th from 150 to 175. So you feel like the irons are firing for Russell Henley. Had a runner-up in this golf tournament back in 2019. And Kevin Strillman's interesting to me as well. He's a veteran that's played well this year. A lot of people were on him, I think, at the Travelers. He let a lot of people down with a miscut there, but this is kind of a nice bounce back spot for him at 9,700. Got Alex Noren coming off a really strong showing at Detroit last week. I believe he had a final round 64. So that's a guy that seems to play well in bunches. Knocked off several Euro Tour wins, kind of getting on hot streaks and just knocking out wins in chunks. So I feel like he's a guy you might want to try to ride the momentum with. Seamus Power is another guy. The 9,000 price tag is gross to me. But we're going to see that a lot this week. But he's playing really well. Has 2 top 10s in his last 4 starts. And is doing it with the irons and the putter, which is what we're looking for this week. Pat and Kazire can rack up birdies and bunches. And Andrew, you mentioned our guy, Maverick McNeely. I was all in last week. He was a member of my core 4. Played really, really well. 4th in this field in birdies or better gained over the last 24 rounds. So I think you can certainly give Mav a look. And as Andy mentioned, Zach Johnson is coming off his best iron performance of the year at the Travelers. Former winner here, obviously sits on the board of directors in this tournament, so he's very familiar with what's going on at the John Deere. Very familiar with this golf course, and had just been a beast there over the course of his career. Hank Lebiota, another member of my core 4 last week, came through huge force in Detroit. 8th in this field in birdies or better gain. 1st in bogey avoidance, which I think, you got, if you're making bogeys this week, you're done. So the form is there with Hank Lebiota. I don't know that I'll be going to Ryan Moore, even though the course history indicates we should probably give him a look. But I'd much rather lean Zach Johnson there between those two, as I can't ever seem to figure Ryan Moore out. But overall, I think this 8K range is pretty fertile when we take into account the entire salary scale. So I'll be grabbing a lot of these guys this week.
Yeah. One last thing about the 8K range before we move on, guys. Joe, we've put our boy Will Gordon up on the shelf here for a while. I'm about ready to put Doc Redman, especially if he's going to be anything above 7,200 in the future. I'm probably going to put him on a pretty high shelf to not play for a while till he shows something change. Major chalk last week, missed the cut. Moving on the 7 range, guys, and this is going to be a big homer talk here for me, but I think he's very underpriced for this field and this type of golf course. Scott Stalling, 7,400. Got win equity there with his rate, but played pretty well last week. He goes in spurts, and right now he seems to be trending up. So we're hoping that maybe we can have a solid week. So Andy, tell me about the 7K range.
I like Stallings a lot. I think the guys that immediately that I have circled are out starting at the top. Like, I like Kyle Stanley a lot. I think that he's going to be pretty popular for the most part. I'm seeing kind of the early ownership projections right now at Fantasy National has him as the highest guy in that 7,000 range at around 14.5%. I think probably, it's still really early in the week on Monday, so a lot's going to change. But I like Kyle Stanley. He's hitting the ball so great right now. He's the only player in this entire field that is top 10 over his last 36 rounds in proximity from 125 to 150 and 150 to 175. So he hits those wedges so well. It's all going to come down to the putter. He's been so dreadful with the putter, but when he does gain with the putter, he tends to win, or he tends to finish really highly. And his ball striking tends to be so good too, that even if he's losing a couple strokes with his putter, he's still making cuts, right? Like, he's made 12 of 16 cuts this season, I believe 5 in a row. So I think Stanley's like a very solid play, provided that ownership doesn't get out of control. I've seen some love for Bo Hostler this week, just based on the very recent form. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there. Dylan Fratelli has not been playing well whatsoever. Steve Stricker is fine. He's actually done a little bit better this year against PGA Tour competition than you would expect. He finished 4th in Phoenix and 13th at the Honda Classic. So I don't think Stricker is a crazy play by any means. I think I'm probably just going to end up going the Zach Johnson route if we're going to talk about the course history guys. And then the only other 2 guys in this range that I could see myself having a lot of is, I get so stuck with some of these iron players. Like Jez Reavie he's gained on approach in 4 weeks in a row. He actually, I don't know if I've ever been as mad as a golfer as I was at Ches Reavie last week, who just demolished some really, really, really good lineups with Sung Jae and Kokrak and Noren and Merritt. And Ches just misses the cut by 1 stroke by 3 putting the final hole, shoots a 74 on that course on Friday to miss the cut. But I could see myself going back to him. He just hasn't putted yet. Is the thing with Ches Reavie, but his wedges are so good. Top 10 in strokes gain approach over his last 36 rounds. And he's continuing to trend upward in the ball striking department, which is what I tend to see. It's just if those putts are going to fall. And then just to echo what you said about Stallings, like I had Stallings circled for me as well. I think he's a great play at $7,400. He's been trending with the ball striking as well. He's doing everything that I like to see. Like he's kind of fine off the tee, really bad with the short game, but the irons have been awesome. Like he gained 5 strokes on approach at the Rocket Mortgage last week. So in that range, I think my 3 favorite guys are probably Stallings, Reavie, and Stanley.
Yeah, all solid plays, Andy. Kyle Stanley kind of always grabs our attention with the ball striking, right? And as you mentioned, it's been there lately. So I'm with you on the popularity. I'll probably let ownership dictate what I do with Kyle Stanley because I do think you have to get hot with the putter this week, man. And you just always, that's the concern with Kyle Stanley. I also toss in Jonathan Vegas right there at 8K. Just above him, just an explosive guy that I feel has top 5 upside when things are going well. We've seen it a couple times this year. Couple runner-up finishes from Johnny Vegas. Not a consistent player by any stretch, but certainly has that explosive upside. Steve Stricker, man, 3 top 20s on the PGA Tour this year, as you mentioned, has kind of held his own. Obviously dominated on the Champions Tour. Recently won the Senior Players Championship on a pretty tough little Firestone golf course. 3-time winner here, so the course history's there to rival even Zach Johnson. So I'll give Steve Stricker a look. Sepp Straka broke a lot of hearts last week. It's kind of the value chalk in Detroit, but maybe it's an interesting buy the dip spot with Straka. Just try to grab him on a buyback. Like Ches Reavie, as you mentioned, we're Scott Stallings homers, but I don't mind a bit going there, man. 3 top 18 finishes over his last 4 John Deere starts, and comes in off as you mentioned, a great ball striking performance where he gained 5 strokes on approach. Anytime I see that on a guy's game log, I'm going to be interested, especially in a tournament where ball striking is important. We saw a little something from Henrik Norlander, a guy that played well earlier in the year and kind of tailed off. It feels like maybe he's back on the upswing, kind of in that Ches Reavie mold. So I don't mind giving Norlander a look. And as we move on down, the options kind of get a little thin. Jim Herman's a guy that I think you'll hear a lot of people talking about this week as a value option. I'm fine with him, but I don't want to be on the chalk wagon if he's going to be extremely popular. But I think he's a guy you can give a look down here at the kind of the lower end of the 7K range. Tyler Duncan is a guy that popped for me just from a course history perspective, has a T26 and a T12 in his last 2 John Deere starts. So I think you can give Tyler Duncan a look if you want to take that course history angle. Andy, you mentioned Ches Reavie breaking your heart. Satoshi Kodaira broke my heart into a million pieces last week, man. Just a brutal back 9 after a beautiful opening round. Just a tough stretch there to close out the second round. Made double on his last hole of the day to miss the cut, and ruined a lot of my lineups in the process. So, he's a guy that we depend on putting with, that can handle short golf courses. So I don't know if I'll have the heart to go back to Kodaira there, but might not be a bad play. This course sets up pretty well for him, I feel like. As we get down into the 6s, Andy, this is always kind of a tough decision every week, especially in these weaker field events. Are you looking at anybody below 7K? And if so, give me a couple of your favorites down there.
I'm always looking at guys below 7K for better or worse. And the one guy also that I didn't talk about, but I'm going to play a lot of Nick Taylor at $7,200. He's like, I don't think anyone's going to play the guy. But the ball striking is just really trending. He gained 1.2 off the tee at the Rocket Mortgage. That's like his best off the tee week in a month. Gained 2.4 on approach too. Best iron week in a month. Just lost 2.5 strokes putting, but he's a really good putter. And last time he lost over 2.5 strokes putting, it was all the way back in January. He came back the next week and gained 4.4 at Riviera. So I'm not concerned about the putter whatsoever. He makes a ton of cuts. He wins golf tournaments. He's the number one player in proximity from 125 to 150 yards over the last 36 rounds. So I think he's a really, really great play. I'm going to play a lot of Nick Taylor. In the 6,000s, there's two guys that I have circled that I could probably see myself going to like a fair bit. There are a bunch more guys that maybe I have some interest in, but I like Adam Schenk at 6,900. I think Roger Sloan is probably going to be like the chalky guy that everyone gravitates to because Sloan is just going to pop in everyone's model. But I think Schenk is probably a better player than Roger Sloan and a nice pivot if you can get like a bit of an ownership discount on him as well. Like he's just terrible around the green, which I don't think is going to hurt him too much here, but he's been really good in all other aspects. And he finished sixth here in 2019. That's actually his best finish of his career. So he knows TPC Deere Run. He has some pretty good experience here. Makes a ton of birdies. I think Schenk is worth a shot. And the only other guy that I think I'm going to seriously feature in some of my lineups is I'm going to play Camilo at 66. I think he's a solid play. He's played here 9 times. He's a bunch of middling finishes. Nothing really special, but he gained 2.9 strokes on approach last week. You'll notice a theme with all of my guys. The thing that I talk about over and over and over again is I want guys that are trending with the ball striking. I want guys that are good putters, maybe coming off bad putting weeks. And Camilo fits all of those he fits the bill and all that. Like he's been losing strokes putting, but he's a guy that can really, really pop with the putter. So the ball striking is trending, and now you're basically just asking him to get that putting week that we've been waiting for. And I think he could really, if he can pair that with the irons, I think he's a pretty solid play at 6,600. Like he's had some pretty good results this year, a couple top 25 finishes. So I'm gonna do Camilo at $6,600.
Yeah, not a bad call there, Andy. Also had a T19 in his last John Deere Classic start. But as you mentioned, kind of playing for his PGA Tour life there earlier this year. And ran off a good stretch of golf there, kind of April, May. Had a stretch of top 25 finishes. So I think you can certainly look at Camilo when you start getting down there in this cheap range. A guy right there in that same area at 66, if we're talking about taking some shots, is Scott Brown, a guy that I'll look at a little bit. Top 25 finishes in 3 of his last 4 John Deere Classic starts. A pure course history play, but the guy, when he's going, he can make birdies in bunches, and obviously he's fared very well on this golf course. Kind of more towards the top of the sixes. I think we have to kind of mention Vincent Whaley. He's been kind of a PGA DFS darling this year with his kind of ridiculously cheap price tags and had some real consistent play there. Has kind of started wobbling a little bit as of late, but at 6,800, man, I think he's a guy that can go out there and make birdies for you, and that's what we're going to need on this golf course. I know we kind of keep ringing that bell, but it must be said that if you're not making birdies this week, par is going to kind of set you back when you're making pars. Another guy, Andrew and I know we're kind of homers for that I want to shout out to Wes Roach down there at 6,600. Had a T10 here in 2019 and has played well on the Corn Ferry Tour. He's kind of lost his status and been playing on the KFT some. But I think he's a guy that when he gets going, this is the type of golf course where he can thrive. He's a very good bent grass putter, and he can handle short layouts. So I think you can look at Wes Roach down there if you're looking for a salary saver. Anybody you're looking at down here, AP? I know we don't normally like to dive down into the sixes too far, but any cheap guys you're looking at this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw out some names that you could throw in some GPPs that I would be looking at. RCB, struggle with him. He always looks great on paper, but never seems to come through. Vincent Whaley, I told you a few weeks ago that bogeying 4 out of the last 8 to miss the cut a couple weeks ago really broke my heart. But I still would like him. Andrew Landry, Sam Ryder, like both of those guys. Maybe, they haven't had the best recent history, but I like both of those guys if I'm having to pick. What about, I don't even know his name, his first name, Bronson Burgoon. I don't think anybody's thrown him out there. He's had horrible as of late. His recent form hasn't been great, but he's played well in this tournament. I don't think he's ever missed a cut here. That's something to throw out. Will Gordon's got a ton of game, but he's on the shelf. He's on the list, Joe. What's up with JB Holmes, guys? Is he hurt? Is he making a huge swing change? Because I watched him play like 3 holes last week, and he birdied 3. And I watched him play the next 3, and he hit 3 duck hooks off the tee. It's something I've never seen before as a professional golfer. It's like golf schizophrenia. I think he might be going through a major swing change and just is lost out there. That's kind of my thoughts. But if you notice anything, Andy, you watch these guys pretty close.
Yeah, just looking at the numbers, he's actually made the cut at the Travelers. He finished 36 at the Travelers and made the cut at the Palmetto too. But yeah, he missed the cut at the Rocket Mortgage and lost a lot on approach, lost a little bit off the tee too. And he's kind of the only reason he's been making these cuts is because he's been getting it done with the putter. Those aren't typically the type of guys that I tend to gravitate to. It's just asking a lot. So probably a no for me on JB Holmes this week.
Yeah. I watched him play the first 3 holes on. He shot 3 under the first day. Friday, I think he was my dart play last week. So Friday, he come out and double bogey start. Duck hooked it off the tee all 3 holes. It was the craziest thing I've seen in a while as a professional golfer. But Pete Malnati at 6,500, guys. Any moment he can get hot with a putter. His most recent form has been terrible. He played great in the fall. I think he's top 70 in FedEx points. As you get down here, it gets really shaky really fast. Aaron Baddeley will probably make the cut. Kevin Tway, played great last week. He's also a guy that comes in streaks, but he doesn't putt the ball great. So, that's just some guys I'm throwing out of just names that I've seen over the years that I like or don't like. That's really it. You're going to be once you get below 72 in this field, you're going to be pretty darty, I feel, if you're going to be picking anybody. Andy, we like to close out the show with a little special thing here we call the Dart and the Heart segment. We're going to name one dart throw, which is, all over the board, and then your heart play, what you really think is going to happen. So go ahead, Andy. Give us your dart, and where's your heart at this week?
Dart-wise, I really like Nick Taylor. Does that count, or do I need to do someone lower? He's $7,200.
You're good.
Okay. I really thank God Austin Eckroat isn't in the field this week, right? I really like
me last week too, man.
Oh my God. It's a lot worse when you're like preaching from the mountaintop too, that he's going to do great things. So yeah, I like Nick Taylor a lot. I think no one's going to play him. I think he's coming in right now in the early ownership projections at like under 5%. I think he's a great option. He would be my dart. And then Hart is it like what more so your strongest play or what you're rooting for the most?
I think we've heard Andrew describe this before as if you wake up in Vegas and you're groggy and you're trying to put the pieces together and you look over and you see a chip, one single chip laying on your nightstand, who you putting it on? Who you putting your last dollar on this week, Andy?
Oh, that's Hart?
Yeah, we're going with the Hart play. Who do you truly believe in? Who's going to win this golf tournament?
I'll go with Henley. I'll go with Russell Henley. Yeah.
Okay. Lock it.
You think Henley can keep the putter hot for 4 days, huh?
Yeah. I do. I think he's had a couple weeks. Like he gained 8 at the Honda. He can pop. He popped at the CJ. So yeah, I'd go with Henley.
He's going to give himself a lot of chances. The way he's hitting his irons right now. This is kind of his specialty range that we're looking at, where a lot of these approach shots are going to be coming from. So, you can never go out and say a guy's going to putt well, but he's going to give himself a lot of opportunities, and that's what it's about.
last round at TPC Deer Run too, he shot a 61. He shot a 61 on Sunday to finish second in 2019. So hopefully he can carry over some good momentum.
So where you at, Joe? Where's your heart and where you throwing your dart at?
Probably not a big surprise. My dart, going with our boy Scotty Stallings, 74. I like the way he struck the ball in his last start. I like his history here. We've seen him kind of repeatedly play well on the same golf courses. So I'll go Scott Stallings as my dart. My heart play, man, it's not very original to say Brian Harman, but the guy's just having a great year. He's played historically really well on this golf course, and I just kind of like everything he's doing, man. I really liked him at the Travelers. Have been rostering him a whole lot this year. Actually had a chance to win the Travelers. Kind of tossed it away there on 17 on Sunday, but even though it's not exciting, it's vanilla ice cream time. I'm going Brian Harman as my heart this week.
Yeah, I agree with you on Stallings. He's definitely a dart thrower for me. I'm throwing it from across the room. The half court shot, I definitely think it's Scott Stallings. Like you said, usually plays good at the same golf courses every time, and a little bit of a weaker field this week, obviously is helpful for him as well. And he plays in spurts, man. He gets hot at times. He'll throw 3 or 4 or 5 weeks in a row where he's played well. Yeah, I hope he does play well because I'll see him the Monday after. Me and Dad are playing in the Scott Stallings Kids Play Free fundraiser Monday at Holston Hills Country Club. So I'll be videoing that Beat the Pro moment over there. But yeah, Scott Stallings definitely the dart play. I definitely feel like Daniel Berger dominates fields like this every time he plays. His first two, I know 2 of his victories came against weaker fields. Also like Maverick McNeely to come out, but I wouldn't put him as who I really think is going to win this tournament. I really think it's Daniel Berger. But yeah, that's my heart and my dart play of the week. And guys, if you like what you heard, like us, send us a comment everywhere you listen to, whether it be YouTube, Apple, whether it be Google. No matter where you're listening to it, guys, give us a like, share with your friends, give us a comment. Andy, man, we appreciate you coming on. Happy to have you at rotoballer.com, the best place in the world for all your daily fantasy needs. Joe, always good to talk to you. Hope we do this again, guys.
Anytime, guys. Thanks so much.
Yeah, so thank you again, rotoballer.com, and this is the Turn Fantasy Golf Podcast.
My first big mistake. I've already hit 3 in the lake. It's gonna dry